Looks like we've got 26 people in on the call, so I think we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll just let the people who are a little late join as they come.
Okay.
So welcome everyone. My name is Lisa Courtney. I'm a planner with BM Ross and Associates out of Goderich. And tonight I'm just looking after the kind of technological aspects of the meeting. So I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping notes and then we'll get into the meeting. First, I'd like to thank everybody who pre-registered. That's very helpful and we certainly appreciate your cooperation with this kind of new pandemic style meeting. Right now I've got everybody muted and I'll just ask that everybody keep their microphones muted while we go through the presentation. It just helps reduce feedback and background noise. Once we get to the question and answer portion of the meeting, I'll be calling on the individuals who've made a note to me that they'd like to ask a question, and I'll ask them to identify themselves and they can unmute themselves and ask their question and then we'll answer it. To unmute, if anybody is just not super familiar with Zoom, if you go down to the bottom of the Zoom window, in the bottom left is a little microphone icon. And if your microphone is muted, it has a slash through it. To unmute yourself, just click that. So if your little microphone is green, it's live, okay? If you're using an iPad or an iPhone, you might have to tap the screen to get the menu at the bottom to come up, but the little mute icon is still in the bottom left of the screen. If you think of a question or comment during the course of the meeting, we're just going to ask that you use the chat function to let me know that you would like to ask a question, and I'll add you to our list and then call upon you. So to use the chat, just go down to the bottom of the Zoom window again. You'll see there's a button that says chat. It'll open up the chat window if you click it, and then you can type me a little message that says, I have a question to ask, okay? One thing to note, we are recording this meeting for just to let us take minutes. And if somebody wants to see it later, we can give them a copy of it. So that's all for the technical aspects of the meeting. I'm going to introduce the panel and then we'll get started on the presentation and then we'll get into the question and answer portion of the meeting. So from the county, we have Miguel Pelche. He's the Director of Transportation and Environmental Services. We also have Jim Donahue. He's the Engineering Manager. And then from BM Ross and Associates, we have Andy Ross, who's the project engineer, and Kelly Vader, who's the planner working on this project. So that's the panel, and I'm just going to get started on the presentation. So just bear with me while I get it pulled up.
Good day. I want to begin by thanking everyone for taking the time to view the presentation and joining us for the virtual public meeting scheduled for September 22nd at 6 p.m. BM Ross and Associates Limited, based in Goderich, is conducting the class environmental assessment process on behalf of the County of Bruce for the replacement of the Teeswater River Bridge in Paisley. Presenting the information will be Kelly Vader, a senior planner, and Andrew Ross, a project engineer. Thank you again for joining the meeting. The presentation should start soon.
During tonight's presentation, we will be reviewing project background and gaining an understanding of the class environmental assessment process. We will summarize some of the feedback received from residents and agencies received to date and review the results of some specialized studies completed in support of the project. We will review the bridge and detour alternatives identified for the project and discuss next steps moving forward.
The Teeswater River Bridge is located on Bruce County Road 3 in central Paisley, spanning the Teeswater River immediately upstream of its confluence with the Saugeen River. The bridge was constructed about 1935. It's a concrete T-beam bridge with 3 spans, 2 smaller end spans at 11.8 meters each, and a longer middle span of 31.6 meters. Sidewalks are currently located on either side of the road, and they're 5 feet in width. There are bridges of a similar style at Dunblane and also one in Walkerton. Major repairs have been completed on this bridge in 1968 and then again in 2009. Maintenance repairs are needed almost every year for the expansion joints and the sidewalks. Bridges of this period were expected to last about 50 years. With improvements in bridge design and bridge building materials, the current bridge code requires a design life of 75 years. This bridge has provided 85 years of service now, but due to the age, general deterioration of numerous concrete components, and more ongoing maintenance to keep the bridge in good structural condition, it's considered time to plan for a replacement. The bridge has some special features. At the south end, the abutment is tied into the building's located adjacent to the bridge, and this will need to be carefully considered during the removal and the construction of the new crossing. The bridge is also integral to the flood control dike system at the north end. Solid panels at the north end of the railings are part of the dike system.
Sorry, folks, I'm just going to start that again. There was a bit of a problem there.
The Teeswater River Bridge is located on Bruce County Road 3 in central Paisley, spanning the Teeswater River immediately upstream of its confluence with the Saugeen River. The bridge was constructed about 1935. It's a concrete T-beam bridge with 3 spans, 2 smaller end spans at 11.8 meters each, and a longer middle span of 31.6 meters. Sidewalks are currently located on either side of the road, and they're 5 feet in width. There are bridges of a similar style at Dunblane and also one in Walkerton. Major repairs have been completed on this bridge in 1968 and then again in 2009. Maintenance repairs are needed almost every year for the expansion joints and the sidewalks. Bridges of this period were expected to last about 50 years. With improvements in bridge design and bridge building materials, the current bridge code requires a design life of 75 years. This bridge has provided 85 years of service now, but due to the age, general deterioration of numerous concrete components, and more ongoing maintenance to keep the bridge in good structural condition, it's considered time to plan for a replacement. The bridge has some special features. At the south end, the abutment is tied into the buildings located adjacent to the bridge, and this will need to be carefully considered during the removal and the construction of the new crossing. The bridge is also integral to the flood control dike system at the north end. Solid panels at the north end of the railings are part of the dike system. These photos illustrate some of the concerns with the current structure. The photo on the left shows deterioration of the concrete on the underside of the sidewalk. It's still safe to use for now, but we need to keep an eye on it with annual inspections, and eventually the sidewalk would need to be closed when the deterioration gets too bad. At right, the photo shows the bridge during a recent flooding event. You can see how high the water level is on the bridge. Because it's at the junction of the 2 rivers, the water level here is completely dependent on the Saugeen River, and has very little to do with the flow of the Teeswater River under the bridge. We will work closely with the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority when we determine what span and elevation will be used in the new design.
The Municipal Class Environmental Assessment process is a planning process used by municipalities when undertaking projects such as road and bridge construction, and as well as sewage and water projects. The process involves a series of steps that are followed in order to evaluate and plan the project appropriately. An evaluation of the environment is conducted to identify specific factors related to the project. This involves a consideration of all components of the environment, including the natural, social, cultural, economic, and built environments. Input from residents, stakeholders, and agencies are used to assist with identifying the potential impacts, as well as the completion of specialized studies. Potential impacts associated with a project are then identified, as well as appropriate mitigation measures to address those impacts. This slide illustrates the steps or phases in the Class EA process. The first is the identification of the problem. Why are you doing the project? What is the problem you're trying to resolve? Then you evaluate the alternatives. Once you identify a problem, a series of alternatives are identified to address that problem. These alternatives are then systematically evaluated to determine what impacts might result from their implementation. For a more complex project, such as the replacement of the Teeswater River Bridge, detailed design concepts are reviewed of the proposed bridge design. This could include the style of the bridge, the number and width of traffic lanes and sidewalks, the appearance of railings and barriers, as well as other design features. Once the process is complete, an environmental study report is prepared which documents the Class EA process completed and is placed on the public record for a 30-day review period. This slide illustrates the steps included in the Class EA process. The red box at the left shows the stage we are currently completing for the Teeswater River Bridge project. The next phase, which will begin following the receipt of input from the public meeting, will be the identification of detailed design alternatives associated with the preferred alternative, and then an evaluation of these alternatives. Once identified and fully assessed, there will be another opportunity for the public to provide input on the various alternatives before a preferred option is selected and the process is finalized. One of the first steps in the Class EA process is consultation with residents and project stakeholders. The EA process for this project was initiated in October of 2019. A notice was published in the Paisley Advocate as well as in the Owen Sound Sun-Times and was also placed on the Erin Elderslie website and the Bruce County website. Property owners in the downtown area were also directly mailed a copy of the notice. Letters were subsequently sent to federal and provincial review agencies and to First Nation and Métis communities to seek their input on the project. Following the receipt of initial feedback, a dedicated website was launched for the project in May of 2020, and signage was erected adjacent to the bridge advertising the web address. This allowed us to capture input from residents who might not live in the community but who travel over the bridge on a regular basis. We have received significant input from residents in regards to this project. Based on this feedback, there is no doubt that this project is very important to the community and something that the entire village is concerned with. I have summarized some of the general comments received during the consultation phase of the project to date. Many of these comments were repeated over and over again by residents. In regards to the design of the new bridge, the community does not want to see a standard concrete bridge with high barrier walls that block the view of the river. They want a bridge that is reflective of the artistic village of Paisley. Wider sidewalks, a possible viewing platform, more open railings, and design components that make the new bridge look unique, unlike other bridges. In regards to the detour options, during construction of the new bridge, most residents were concerned with impacts to downtown businesses that would result from an out-of-town detour. Businesses are already struggling due to COVID-19 and rely heavily on the summer tourist traffic to be profitable. Additional concerns were expressed about impacts to school-aged children and families if separated by a long detour, as well as safety concerns if fire and EMS response times were negatively impacted by the detour. The local road detour option also could potentially impact the Mennonite community, as several local schools are located along the routes and many children bike or walk to school on a regular basis. Input from agencies was also received. The Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks indicated that consultation with Indigenous communities, is required and that potential concerns associated with climate change and source water protection will need to be considered as we are evaluating impacts associated with the project. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, who regulates the bridge site and the adjacent river valleys, also provided feedback. They confirmed that the area is regulated by Ontario Regulation 16906 and that a permit will be required for the new bridge. They have provided BM Ross with historical information related to past flooding events and the flood control dike system. A key concern is ensuring that the new bridge does not negatively impact flooding potential in the community. The Bruce County Planning Department also provided feedback on the project. They reiterated concerns expressed by many residents about the new bridge design and that it should be reflective of the unique community and setting in Paisley. They also suggested coordination with redevelopment of the Paisley Inn, which is located southwest of the bridge. The Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries, formerly Ministry of Culture, indicated that the county is required to assess the potential impacts of the project on archaeological resources, built heritage resources, and cultural heritage landscapes. Screening tools are provided to assist with this process and must be documented in the final report. The Grey Bruce Health Unit also provided input on the project. They noted that a key priority for them is injury prevention and expressed concern over the local detour routes that might negatively impact the Mennonite community. We have reached out to this community through a local contact and will try to accommodate their concerns related to the project and the potential detour routes. The health unit also expressed concerns related to the community that could result from an out-of-town detour that could negatively impact businesses and create hardship for residents who need to cross the river on a daily basis for work, family, school, and access to local businesses. As stated previously, once a Class EA is initiated, a problem is identified, and the next step is to identify a range of alternatives to address the impact. For this project, the alternatives for replacement of the bridge are fairly limited, given the location and limitations presented by the existing buildings, the rivers, and the road network. There's only a few options that are available. Alternative 1 would be replacement of the bridge in the same location and alignment as the existing crossing. Alternative 2 would be to replace the bridge in a slightly modified location. A third option, alternative 3, would be to do nothing. When completing a class environmental assessment process, the do nothing option must always be considered if the impacts associated with the other alternatives become too great. This aerial photo illustrates the current setting of the bridge. Given the constraints presented by the buildings located on either side of the south approach and the road network adjacent to the north end of the bridge, replacement in the same location is the only logical alternative available for this project. A review of detailed design components such as sidewalks, railings, and other features will be considered in the next phase of the Class EA process.
As you are likely aware, the county posted 4 detour options on the project website for residents to review and provide their input. The first alternative is a detour that uses only county roads and would extend east out of Paisley before returning to County Road 3 north of the village. Alternatives 2A and 2B would use local roads for the detour. An east and west option has been identified. The east option is located entirely within Erin Elderslie, while the west option is located in the municipalities of Brockton and Kincardine. If the county road detour were selected, it's likely that local residents would use the local detour routes anyway. Alternative 3 would require the construction of a temporary bridge crossing downstream of the bridge spanning the Saugeen River. This option would allow local traffic to cross the river with only a minor road diversion and would also allow for a pedestrian crossing. The next slides illustrate these 3 options. This map illustrates the county road detour. The detour is 43.5 kilometers long and uses Bruce Roads 11, 10, and 40 to return back to Bruce Road 3. This route provides the same level of service as Bruce Road 3. This detour would be located entirely on paved roads, but due to the length would be a significant inconvenience and concern to local residents who just want to get across the Teeswater River to the other half of town. It would also isolate the businesses on the north side of the bridge. Options 2A and 2B would use the local roads. The east route in Erin Elderslie is 13 kilometers long and is primarily located on paved surfaces. One section along Side Road 5 Elderslie is gravel surfaced, but reasonably wide for 2 lanes of traffic. However, there is a school on Side Road 5 with many students walking or cycling to school, and there's a pretty good volume of horse-drawn vehicles using the road. This would be a safety concern with the increase in bypass traffic. The west route is slightly longer at 18 kilometers and is located in the municipalities of Brockton and Kincardine. Portions of the route are paved, however, the section along Side Road 30 is gravel surfaced. The one block between Bruce-Saugeen Town Line and Concession 12 is only single lane and currently has no winter maintenance. It would require a significant amount of work to be able to adequately handle the bypass traffic. The Bruce Greenock Road cannot be used because the bridge there over Willow Creek is limited to 5-ton capacity. Both routes pass along road sections that are used by horse-drawn vehicles. That increases the safety risk. The in-town detour would be located east off of Goldie Street by the fire hall. A new road approach would need to be constructed west of the fire hall, crossing the river and exiting behind the arena onto Church Street. This option is approximately half a kilometer long and would be the best option, obviously, for local residents and businesses. It is also very expensive. The dike integrity has to be maintained, and the bridge opening has to consider the river and ice flows that could be expected during the construction period. We'll be working with Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority for this, and we'll need their approval. We need to ensure that the temporary crossing does not negatively impact emergency services. This option will affect parking at the arena and community center, obviously, during the construction period only. For all options, signage would be put up at the start of the detours and at the entrance to the town, indicating that local businesses are open during construction and can be accessed safely. This slide illustrates a cross-section of the proposed temporary steel panel bridge, showing the width of the traffic lanes and the proposed pedestrian walkway. The walkway would probably be located on the west side of the crossing. The 2 traffic lanes would be 3.5 meters in width, that's 11.5 feet, with a dedicated shoulder outside of that. 2 trucks can safely and comfortably meet on the bridge, but the corners on Goldie Street and Church Street will be less than standard. Signage could be put up at the entrance to Paisley, suggesting that through truck traffic could use the county road detour. That's alternative number 1. This may divert some of the through truck traffic. A 1.5 meter, 5-foot sidewalk would be located on the outside of the truss panels for safety. This option is the highest cost to the county. It's going to be in the range of $2.5 million, which would result in an increase in the county taxes. It is also likely to increase the truck noise and exhaust at the intersections, and there may be impact noises from the steel panel bridge. Pedestrians may feel an uncomfortable vibration on the temporary bridge as trucks go past. However, all of this is just for the time of construction. Although this option is the most preferred by residents, it cannot be selected as a preferred alternative until the hydrology study is completed and we can prove that it can be installed without negatively impacting flood levels in Paisley. Approval from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority will be required. With a preferred alternative for the new bridge identified to replace the bridge in the same location, we can now begin to consider the design features of the new crossing. The basic design criteria would include 3 spans and 2 in-water piers, similar to what the current bridge is. A slightly shorter span is being considered that would eliminate a portion of the most southerly span adjacent to the former mill. The building currently blocks the flow coming down the Teeswater River, so removing that section shouldn't impact flood levels. However, modeling needs to be completed that would confirm this assumption, and we also need to consider the mill race flow. The image at the top left of the screen illustrates a possible cross-section for the new bridge. There'd be 2 lanes of traffic measuring 3.3 meters, that's 10.8 feet in width, and a 1 meter side clearance on each side, and sidewalks on either side at 1.8 meters, that's 6 feet wide. This example is from the new bridge in Chesley. The design needs to maintain the integrity of the dike system and also accommodate for the buildings located adjacent to the South Road approach. Options for aesthetic features are to be considered. The photo at the bottom left of the slide shows just one example of a panel design that could be considered to be sympathetic to the existing railings. Regardless, the new railings need to meet the safety requirements prescribed in the bridge code. During later stages of the environmental assessment, we'll put forward some other options to be considered.
Several specialized studies have been completed in support of the project. The first is a natural environment, aquatic habitat, and species at risk assessment, which was completed by Natural Resource Solutions based in Waterloo. Because the new bridge will impact the existing habitat in the river, we need to examine this environment in more detail in order to identify specific areas of concern which may need to be addressed in the bridge design. The proposed location for the temporary bridge was also examined as part of this assessment. The Teeswater and Saugeen rivers are known to provide habitat for freshwater mussel species. Several species were found during examination of the river, however, none of these are protected by the Endangered Species Act. Habitat for other protected species was also examined during the assessment, including barn swallows, bats, and snapping turtles. No species at risk or their habitat were identified during the assessment completed this summer. This study will be useful in identifying mitigation measures which will need to be implemented during construction of the new bridge and to assist with obtaining approvals from DFO. Due to the age of the bridge, an assessment of the heritage value of the structure was also required. The report completed is called a Cultural Heritage Evaluation Report, or CHAIR. The report was completed by Timmins Martell Heritage Consultants based in London, Ontario. They visited the site and took photos of the structure, as well as completing research on the structure itself and the surrounding buildings and the community of Paisley. The report then evaluated potential impacts to the heritage features that were identified and suggested possible approaches to address these impacts. The statement of cultural heritage value identified for the bridge is as follows. The bridge is a rare and early example of a curved concrete T-beam bridge in Ontario, which retains its original design features and is notable for its 3 continuous spans. This slide shows 2 images from the Heritage Report. The top left is an illustration of one of the first bridges to be constructed over the Teeswater River at the site, a wooden bridge that was constructed in the mid-1800s. The photo at the bottom is of an iron bridge which spanned the river after the wooden bridge was removed. This structure preceded the current bridge that's at the site. Implementation of Alternative 1, removal of the bridge, will result in a loss of cultural heritage value represented by the structure. Some options to mitigate this impact are 1. Document the site using photos or drawings to ensure that an accurate record of the heritage features is retained and would be deposited with the Bruce County Archives. A second option would be the design of the railings and barriers, which could incorporate sympathetic details from the original bridge. Another option would be to include other design details associated with the bridge in the design of the new structure.
A hydrology investigation of the river and site is required to assess the flood level impacts associated with the new structure and the temporary bridge also. Floodplain mapping was completed in Paisley by Saugeen Valley when they developed the flood control dike system. The mapping is now a bit old and needs to be updated in order to properly assess the current conditions. This may include additional survey cross-sections within the river and updates to the existing flood models for Paisley. We will be in discussions with Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority about how current modeling can be used or modified. The hydrology report will be completed by BM Ross hydraulic engineering specialists who are familiar with the models. Additional consultation will be undertaken with Saugeen Valley to ensure that they are in agreement with any modifications to the model. Impacts associated with ice jamming will also need to be considered as part of the modeling exercise.
Following the public meeting scheduled for September 22nd, we will move forward with work on the floodplain model and begin the preliminary design of the new bridge. The preliminary design completed for the temporary bridge will be further refined based on feedback from SVCA and from Aaron Eldersley. Based on the results of these two exercises, a second public meeting will be scheduled for the spring of 2021 to present the new information to residents and to obtain their feedback. Once a preferred design is selected, the Class EA process can be finalized and we can move forward with final design and obtaining required approvals from the Saugeen Valley, the Fisheries Department, and from Ministry of the Environment. Assuming the above timelines can be met, construction would be tentatively scheduled to begin in 2022. The next step in the Class EA process are to collect input from residents, stakeholders, review agencies, and Aboriginal communities following the public meeting. Discussions will be initiated with Saugeen Valley on the hydrologic investigation, and the design will begin in earnest on the new bridge. Details will be finalized for the temporary bridge, and we will start to prepare the environmental study report, which will document the EA process. Once completed, a notice of study completion will be prepared and made available for review, and the ESR will be placed on the public record for a mandatory 30-day review period. If no appeals are received during the review period, the county would be free to move forward with implementation of the project. Thank you very much for taking the time to view this presentation. Comments or questions on the presentation material can be directed to Kelly Vader at kvader@bmross.net or through the project website at www.paisleybridgestudy.ca. You can also participate in the virtual public meeting scheduled for September 22nd at 6 p.m. Please contact Lisa Courtney at lcourtney@bmross.net to register for the meeting. Staff from the County of Bruce and BM Ross will be present at the meeting to answer your questions.
All right, so go ahead, Lisa.
I just would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that if they want to review the presentation, they can do so at paisleyBridgeStudy.ca.
All right, thank you very much for the great presentation. We'll be moving to questions shortly. Just wanted to add a couple of points. So as you see right now, this is a very complex problem. So we're nowhere near finding the end solution and the final result. There's a lot more work to be done before we can come up with a final solution. Today we were hoping to provide you with information and seek your input if we're going in the right direction, or also if there's some maybe alternatives we haven't considered. If you have ideas, by all means bring them forward to us. That's the whole purpose of the meeting. There was a discussion about the detour costing $2.5 million. Of course, the cost of the project is a factor on which solution we pick. However, the county has abilities to get funding from other places, like the higher level of government, or we can also borrow money. So don't necessarily take that into account when you. So it's a very important factor, but it's not the critical factor on which solution we pick. So I guess if we can start with the first question.
Sure. Michael Reed had a question. So Michael, if you could please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hi, I guess you actually answered my question during the presentation. I was looking at the cost of what a temporary bridge would be versus the other detours. And I just have concerns about some of the detours just on many aspects, like winter driving out here isn't the greatest, and just school children in town trying to get to school, and I just had a lot of concerns about that, basically.
Andy, I don't know if you want to add any anything to this or more comments on the detour?
Certainly. We actually hired the expertise of a bridge contractor to do some estimating on that temporary detour bridge. And that's where we got the $2.5 million. When we get into final design, we'll see if there's any economies we can have there. Narrower width, we're not sure. Width, that's not a firm number, but that's our best guess for budgeting purposes at this time.
Good. Next question.
Melissa Kanmaker, sorry if I've butchered your last name, but you had indicated you had a question. If you could please unmute your mic.
Hi there. Yep, I'm a resident of Paisley as well as a business owner downtown. And I'm really happy to hear that you've had lots of feedback about how hard we've all been hit by COVID, and that's being taken into consideration. One of my questions was around the design, but you've sort of mentioned that, and that's encouraging to know that, you know, the Paisley brand, the Artistic River Village, is being considered. So I won't ask that question, but my other question was around the temporary bridge. Is there any chance that that bridge could become part of our walking trails? I can't remember the exact number. I think we have about 19 kilometers of groomed walking trails, which is definitely used very well by the community, and having that temporary bridge become part of that trail would certainly be a nice attraction to the town.
So I'll ask Andy to talk to that again, because the plan is to rent the bridge, not to buy it. So to buy the bridge, it would be probably a different cost. So Andy?
Yes, that's right. The contractor's estimate was for rental, and we're estimating about 14 months rental period. To buy the bridge outright would cost more in capital outlay. Also, it's not going to be a pretty bridge. It's going to look fairly industrial, these steel panel bridges. And it'll be overkill, having 2 lanes of traffic with a pedestrian sidewalk. So, but it's a good point. If you're going to want some type of pedestrian crossing, are there options there for more permanent pedestrian crossing only that doesn't cost so much and looks a bit better? We'll have to look into those. So comments received, and we'll have to consider that.
Thank you.
Sarah Pedersen, you had a question. If you could unmute your mic, please.
Oh, I didn't have any questions. I just had wondered if there was the option to ask questions if we had come up with one, but I am okay for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Hamill, you're next on my list. If you could unmute your mic, please.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. So
Yep.
I am a Erin Ellerslie resident and mayor of Erin Ellerslie and Bruce County councilor. So I have some knowledge prior to this meeting about this, but I do have a question. And the question is, if it wasn't for buildings directly to the west, would it have been an option to build a bridge right beside the existing bridge?
Andy, if you can go ahead.
Yes, Mayor Steve, do you mean like a temporary bridge right beside the existing bridge? Is that what you mean?
Well, I was more referring to like a permanent bridge. If there wasn't in construction, is it possible to build a bridge right close to the existing bridge? But we do have buildings that we have to deal with.
Yes, that's correct. Often we do that where the replacement bridge is set right beside so that you can use the existing bridge during the time of construction. Where that's possible, yeah, that could be done. You'd have to consider the long-term effects of a little bit of a zigzag in the main street. You already have some alignment. It's not a straight street anyway. To the north, you've got a bit of a curve in the main street there. But you're right. If the buildings weren't there, we could look at those options. We haven't done that yet.
Okay, no, thank you. And wanted to reiterate, years of comments from residents is that our detour has to be short or in town. So option 3 is definitely preferred from the public. And also wanted to note that not only is this a bridge for Erin Ellerslie, but a very busy road for Bruce County and a connector for a lot of traffic. There's a lot of traffic there. So those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Mary Gail Johnston, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, I'm wondering, how long is it expected that the bridge replacement might take?
Yeah, back to Andy.
Until we get into the design to see what elements need to be constructed, the foundations, things like that. We haven't even done a soils report yet. So I'm just going through from my years of experience here, I'm picturing that this is going to take a bit more than 1 year. I'm guessing about 14 months. Now, part of that is just installing the temporary bridge and removing it at the end. So the disruption to traffic, I'm hoping, is in the range of 10 to 12 months while the old bridge is demolished and the new bridge is constructed. So 10 to 12 months where you won't be able to use the bridge in its normal alignment.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
Has there been thought about access for the buildings at either end of the current bridge during that construction time?
Yes, we haven't gotten into the details yet. We're expecting that there still will be access. It may not be the main access off of Main Street. We may have to go off of the side streets for some of those buildings. And it will depend on the actual construction activity at a time. Because of the approaches to the road and the construction of the abutments, for example, maybe it's only 3 or 4 months that people wouldn't be able to get into the front door.
Okay, thank you.
Jen, you had a question?
Yeah, hi. More of a comment than anything. We live just outside of Paisley, my family and I, and while we share a lot of the same concerns about, accessing the north half of Paisley, while I look at your detour routes there, I'm also concerned about traffic by our home because we already have a lot of concerns that we've raised to Brockton regarding traffic levels and speeds and things like that past our home, and with kids walking along the side, like you were saying about going to school and so on. We're on the west, we're not on the side of the Mennonite school, but there's still school children walking and biking along the road and just increased traffic, I guess. And there's no sidewalk on our bridge that we have to take to go into town, so just added traffic concerns us a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jen. Tammy, you're next on the list.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Tammy.
Great. So 2 questions. The first one is in alignment with Melissa's question, and that's regarding if we're going to spend $2.5 million on a temporary bridge, maybe we can contemplate this temporary bridge leaving something behind, whether it's a pedestrian walkway or something that enhances this artistic river village experience. Something that brings the community closer to the river and aligns with this promenade or this walkway or this hiking trail. To spend $2.5 million and not have something left just seems like kind of a short-term investment. And then second to that, I know, and I at least have seen, there's quite a bit of piping along the bridge, and I'm not sure what purpose that is, and has that been factored into what happens when we either tear the bridge down or we change it?
Yeah, so Andy, if you can speak to that, there are services under the bridge and they are being considered, but Andy can give me some more detail. And I don't know if Scott McLeod from the Elderslie is there, but if he is, that would be his pipes.
Yes, as far as we know, so far there's a water line that's down under the river. So it's not a concern for the bridge, except we have to be careful when the foundations are built that we respect that water line or replace it in some other way. We often have to deal with these things during the final design and the specification writing. I believe the pipe that you've mentioned on the side of the bridge, I think that's a conduit for telecommunication lines. We'll be checking on that as well. And often in the design of the new bridge, we'll put conduits right encased in the concrete of the sidewalk so that you won't see that utility if that's what it is.
So is this a Scott question still, or have we just answered that, you think?
No, I think, but Scott is on the line if he wants, Scott, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, it's Scott here, Miguel. Andy's correct. There's no municipal services on that bridge, meaning water or sewer. They're all through the river. And I think Andy's correct on the telecommunication aspect on the present bridge. Thanks.
Okay, we've got a question from Jennifer.
Okay, so I think this might actually be possibly a Scott question as well. So I apologize if the county team isn't able to answer it. I've heard that there's also some other road work that possibly might be happening in Paisley, and there's a desire to try and coordinate that. So I'm wondering if someone is able to speak to that tonight. And also I've heard that the location of the fire hall could possibly impact the temporary bridge location. So I'm wondering if someone could speak to that and answer that question. Is the fire hall location a factor that needs to also then be considered in there?
Do you want me to speak to that? Jen, it's Scott here. The fire hall I can't comment on, but I can comment that the municipality would like to consider doing some infrastructure work to the north end of the bridge. That would be future planning with us and I guess the county if that was to take place, and financially. I can't see infrastructure taking place south of the bridge because it probably wouldn't be conducive to the construction taking place. And but the north end it might be an option, but that has not been decided at this point. Just comments have been made about it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we certainly intend to coordinate county efforts and efforts from the municipality. This year, for example, there's a lot of work, and we're trying to coordinate it and schedule it to minimize the impact on the residents. Oh yeah, definitely there will be coordination.
Okay, Kevin. Oh, Kevin doesn't have a mic, so I will ask Kevin's question for him. He has asked, have we considered lights on the bridge like in Paisley?
Yeah, I'll answer that. Typically in urban environments like this, downtown areas, lights would be included on the bridge, and the electrical conduits would be hidden in the concrete. Probably the Chesley Bridge also has lights on it like that. There are several examples around. So typically it would be the municipality that specifies what light poles and luminaires are used to make sure that they tie in with the rest of the downtown area.
Wendy has a question she would like to ask.
Hi there. First of all, thanks for tonight. It's fun for us to participate. A few things, I'll just leave it with you to answer. Railing, I heard there's a logical situation with railing. Some people want to visually see the dam, but I heard also it's an issue to take railings away so the salt and the residue from maintenance doesn't go into the waterways. So that's one thing maybe you can address. As a renter on the building at the very south end that's attached to the bridge, it interests me the race considerations. there is a small patio area between the road and the woolen mill, AKA Back Eddies, or wherever I am renting with my new business. And the last thing, natural gas coordination, will that be done at about the same time? And is that configured in as well? And thank you very much for your answers.
Right, Andy, so you can take the first kick at this.
Yeah, so I can tackle the first two. I can't talk about the natural gas. So for the railings, yes, just to let you know, the existing railings that are there that were designed in 1934 and built 1935, they don't meet the current code requirements for the Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code. But it's status quo, so they're tolerable and they're accepted. We don't replace them just for that. But for a new bridge, we are obligated by law to make something that has the geometric design requirements from the bridge code and also the strength requirements from the bridge code. So it's really difficult to get an open railing that you can see through like the existing ones and still meet the strength requirements. On the other hand, there are some modified ones. It doesn't have to be a 1 meter high solid concrete wall. And later on, we'll present some options there. Also, you made a good point about the salt getting in the water. Aside from the environmental effect, you'll remember in the presentation, there was one slide that showed the underside of the sidewalk. Maybe many of you haven't seen that, but there's a lot of rusted reinforcing steel. And that's caused from the salt that's used on the sidewalk, dribbling over the edges and attacking the reinforcing steel there. So that's become a big maintenance problem and eventually a safety problem. So what we typically do is have at least a concrete curb, and we'll have to decide how high that is, and then metal railings on top of that. So a combination of concrete and metal railings. That's likely where we'll start our design concepts, but we'll bring it forward to the county for discussion. As far as the building goes, I would be interested in speaking with the owner of the building to find out what the long-term plans are for the mill race. Right now, we're assuming that we'll have to maintain flow from that mill race, whether it's contained in the main span of the new bridge, or if we put a culvert or a conduit through the approach road to the new bridge. Those are two options. If they want to maintain the mill race flow, we have to respect that in the design somehow.
And I can speak to the gas project. We are in contact with the gas company. Basically, they require to work on county property. They do require our authorization or our agreement. So yes, we are coordinating with coordinating with the gas company. However, they do have their schedule. It's a big project, so we may not be necessarily going to be able to time it that they put their pipe at the same time we put the bridge in. We haven't worked out those details yet with them because they're not at that stage of the project yet. But we are definitely in contact with the gas utility for the installation of gas. Yeah.
Tammy, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Just to follow up with Wendy's comment, the aesthetics of this particular bridge and balancing it with the safety and the code requirements, we understand that. But in light of the fact that we are the artistic river village, the impact of the aesthetics is vital to all of our planning, our marketing, and how we attract business to the community. So I just want to mention that. I know that there's safety expectations, but we need to keep this a little bit balanced. And I'm sure that you've heard this in a number of the comments already.
Yeah, certainly. And I guess, don't know if there's I guess there's probably a theme in mind and all that. So when we come up with like Andy mentioned, when we come up with the more detailed design, that's when we can incorporate those elements.
Are there any further questions or comments from the folks listening in?
I'll unmute myself. You can see my lips moving. So, all right. So thank you very much. Like I said, this is in the end. This is just the beginning. So we do plan to have another public information session when we're further down the design. You're all welcome to participate again. In the meantime, even though you can still send us input at the email address that were given earlier. So if you have some input, some ideas you didn't think about tonight, you can send them to us at any time, really. We don't have to wait till the Public Information Center.
We've got one question in so far, Miguel,
Yeah.
before we let everybody free. It is from Kevin. Kevin, would you like to ask your question? Oh, he says he'll send it in. No worries.
Okay, sounds good. So thanks for the great job there, Lisa.
I hope everybody has a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.